I know Germany presents an excellent example of a democracy really being proactive with the Energiewende that's going on in Germany now. How do you see that going as an experiment in getting at these issues?
Basically, it's okay. When I was member of parliament and chairman of the Environment Committee, we initiated that feed-in tariffs law for renewable energies. It was a big success story, but it became expensive. So at the last election, the majority wanted to reduce the feed-in tariffs because it was becoming too expensive. So one has to adjust. But this is part of democracy.
And German business is finding a way to adjust?
They keep complaining. I mean, this is the habit of business. They keep complaining. But it is not correct. I mean, they are doing great business under the conditions set by the state.
Right.
Part of the problem, I mean, I've been also chairman of the Globalization Committee in Parliament, and there we found a very astonishing thing. The term globalization appeared in the languages of the world after 1990. And we were asking why. And the explanation is the following. Until 1990, there was the East-West conflict, forcing industry, finance, the rich to somehow cooperate with the state, because the state was the bulwark against communism. And after 1990, this motive was gone. And now international capital became very arrogant against the state, not allowing the state to set the frame for business. And if you look at Adam Smith, for him it was absolutely clear that morale and the law and the state were in a balance with the invisible hand, with the markets. While today, markets are global and the law is national. And then the result is that states are obeying the instruction from international capital. And this is the big, big mistake which we have to overcome by doing more international ruling. And I believe the Club de Madrid is doing the right things in this direction, thinking of global governance and helping make a level playing field also for social and environmental goals, which business typically doesn't like, and make that a global affair.
I mean, just coming back on that, I mean, I think I might be a bit more optimistic about global capital. And I think one of the reasons is I think there are strong structural incentives that often drive capital to be short-term. And that actually that short-term success is often at the expense of long-term success. And I think there are ways if we can change the incentives through information, through measurement like the Social Progress Index, but also through other measures, other interventions to try and help capital think for the long term, then I think we'll change the incentives and we can see capital being used very differently. So I'm a bit more optimistic about how the role that capital and business can play.
What kind of incentives would you recommend?
Well, I think one of the big issues, certainly in the UK that I know best, is the way that we define the fiduciary duty of investors. Is that often there's an incentive, say for example pension funds. Pension funds you would have thought should be the longest term investors in the market, but often the way they're regulated, certainly in the UK, very strong pressures to maximise short-term present value. And that's partly because in terms of the regulation, there's not an empirical foundation on which to justify the trade-off. And obviously the concern is going to be that if trustees focus on the long term, are they just being self-indulgent? So to understand that trade-off between long-term and short-term, get away from short-termism based on real empirical research is a big priority.
How is the German government incentivizing business right now as part of the energy turn?
Parallel to the feed-in tariffs law, we also introduced an ecological tax reform, reducing the fiscal load on human labor and increasing the load for energy. And this was a perfect instrument to incentivize energy efficiency.
And so
In
that-
Norway, you have a similar thing.
You know, we're moving now on to phase 2 of our panel because Dr. Green has to get back to London for some important meetings. Michael, I want to thank you so much for your presentation today. I know we all have learned a lot and have a lot to think about. Thank you so much.
Tom, thank you.
Yes, indeed.
It's been a pleasure.
So to start phase 2 of our panel now, I'd like to ask Bjørn Haugland and Heather McGeory to join us on the stage. So Bjørn Haugland, I know most of you know well. He's with De Norske Veritas Germanische Lloyd, or DNV-GL. He's been very active in creating sustainable programs, active in Sustainia, which will describe to us the Opportunity Network. And Bjørn, we're very, very happy to have you with us today. And Heather works in New York for Just Capital and has been very instrumental in developing new tools to give the public and even the disadvantaged a greater voice on climate change, digital engagement using the new technologies. She's started companies or institutions such as Here Now and Purpose. As I say now, she's with Just Capital. So I'll start with Bjørn and ask, we've been talking a lot about business and the role of business in this, and I know you're deeply involved internationally with these networks. Could you describe business's role from your point of view?
Yeah, so I think business has a big and growing role to play. Business has today global business networks, capacity, competence, technology. And I think we see the green shift as a great opportunity. So what we experience, and we are doing business today in more than 100 countries, is that it is almost like a green race among business. We see the green shift as a great opportunity to deploy new technology. And I think also the kind of the social aspect of this is coming closer to business, partly because driving a business today is like being a politician yesterday in terms of transparency. I mean, the consumers are really looking after business much stronger today than before due to the access of information through technology and so on. So I think the business is also much more conscious about operating in a social good way and contribute in that respect. And
what kind of work is Sustainia doing, for example?
yeah, so I mean, part of what we are doing is really to look at this transition not only as a top-down process, but definitely at a bottom-up process. And it is so many good initiatives going on around the world. And Sustainia is a platform where we collect all of these good solutions. And we rate them and we promote them so they can multiply and scale. So that is good solutions for a sustainable future in different sectors. And I would also say we are working together with UN Global Compact, on a work to look at opportunities, basically turning risks to opportunities. And I just showed you this report because it is available for you outside. So I think, and it's a lot of similar initiatives going on these days, where business basically take a lead in order to create a sustainable future in a good way for business. And I think you mentioned as well that it is a good market for business. I think the energy vendor basically provide a good future market for German business players.
Very good. And it sounds as if really business is doing more in terms of global governance right now than is happening among governments in a way. Is that an example of capital kind of driving this,
Yeah,
this issue?
I think it is, to simplify a little bit, I think it is a race between business now to position ourselves into this new future. And I think we see good opportunities. I think governments still are struggling how to cope with this. And therefore, I think part of the solution is to work much closer together, governments together with business. Because I think basically business love regulation. We like regulation because regulation creates a common playing field for us. But we would like to see more global regulation because the markets are global. And that is probably an area where we need to improve together.